Hey guys, in this video, we're going to take a look at installing a Docker application that will allow you to build internal apps for your business, your team, your organization, or whatever it is you might need to develop an internal application for. Now, this is one of those applications because it's Docker. We can install it just about anywhere we wanted to, but because Linode is sponsoring this video, we're going to go ahead and get Appsmith set up on Linode. So if we take a look at Appsmith's website here, this is appsmith.com, we can see that this is an open source, low code platform to build, ship, and maintain internal tools. Allows you to connect any data source, create UIs with pre-built widgets, code freely with an inbuilt JS editor, that's of course JavaScript, and you can deploy with one click. Now, you may be wondering, well, what are internal tools? And if we scroll down, they actually answer that for us. And its internal tools are custom dashboards, admin panel, and CRUD apps that enable your team to automate processes and securely interact with your databases and APIs. So again, in this video, we're actually going to get Appsmith installed. We'll go through a quick kind of built-in tutorial, and then we'll kind of wrap things up and go from there. Now, Linode has a tutorial on their website on how to do this, but they've also got some things in their Linode dashboard that's going to help us simplify this process. So if you want to follow along, I will have links to this tutorial in the description down below, but let's jump over and get this installed kind of in an easier fashion. Also, if you'd like to follow along with this tutorial, be sure to head down to the description where you'll find a link that will take you over to Linode to give you $100 in free credit to try their service out for 60 days. So with that out of the way, here we are logged into our dashboard. Hopefully you'll be logged in as well. And the first thing we want to do is come up to the top right and click on the Create Linode button. Now, here's where I'm going to deviate from Linode's tutorial just a little bit. I'm actually going to come over to Marketplace, and I'm going to search for Docker under Select an App. I'm going to click that. And that's going to kind of go through the process of installing Docker and Docker Compose and all of those things that are part of Linode's initial tutorial. I want to go this route just to simplify it a little bit. So once we've selected Docker here, we can scroll down. We can actually hide the advanced settings if we want to do that. You could actually, if you wanted to be a bit more secure, you could create a sudo user that isn't root, which is probably a better idea just for security purposes, that sort of thing. We're going to skip that for right now just to keep this as simple as possible, because I want to give you the opportunity to enable your own security practices and protocols based on whatever your needs are. So I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to select an image. I'm going to use Debian 11. Of course, there's Debian 10. There's also Ubuntu 20.04 LTS. That's the long-term support version of that. So you've got some options on what you can use with regards to a Docker instance here. Next, we're going to select a region. Basically, we want to select a region that's close to wherever most of our activity is going to originate. Now, they don't have a region that's super close to me. However, the closest one they've got is Dallas, Texas. So that's the one I'm going to select here. Below that, we've got some options for a dedicated CPU, shared CPU, high memory, or GPU. Honestly, for the sake of this tutorial, you could really go dedicated or shared. Of course, if you use the link in the description, you'll get that $100 in free credit for 60 days. So let's just go ahead and go with the dedicated 4 gig, and that will give us $30 a month in fees for this. But again, this is on Linode's dime. So let's go ahead and do that. Below that, we're going to scroll down. We're going to select a label. You can kind of name this whatever, but let's name it something with some purpose behind it, right? So we're going to just call this Appsmith. We're not going to need tags. We don't need tags. That's just, again, for categorization purposes. Below that, we're going to enter a root password. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. Next, if you had an SSH key installed on your computer, whether it's your work computer, your laptop, whatever, you could import that key here and log in more securely if you wanted to do that. We're not going to for the sake of this video. Just know that you can if you wanted to do that. Below that, we've got the option for a VLAN. We don't need to do a VLAN for this demonstration here, so do with that what you will. Backups, I always like to have backups. Backups, you should never deploy anything without a backup, in my opinion. And I'm also going to do a private IP just because I like having a private IP when I deploy applications and that sort of thing. Once we've got this set up the way we want to, down at the bottom, we can see our summary, and then we can click on Create Linode. Now, this will go through a process of provisioning and booting and that sort of thing. Once it's booted up, you're still going to need to wait a few minutes for all of the stuff like Docker and Docker Compose to be installed. So if you get logged in and you do like a Docker PS and it's like, hey, we don't recognize that, give it a few minutes and Docker will get installed, and then we can kind of move on to our next steps. So here we are just a few minutes later, and we can see that Appsmith, or the Appsmith Linode rather, is up and running and ready to go. So what we want to do is SSH into our server. So what we're going to do is copy that. We're going to open up a terminal window here, and we're just going to go ahead and paste that in, and we're going to enter our password. Now, it may throw up a little message saying, hey, are you sure you want to connect to this? Just go ahead and type in yes, and then it will ask you for a password, and then we can kind of proceed from there. So we'll hit enter, and now we are logged in. What I want to do next is actually clear my screen by pressing Control L, and I want to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for you guys to see on the screen. Now, what I encourage you to do is actually head over to Appsmith's GitHub repository so that we can see all of the files that are in here and get ourselves familiar with the code if we want to go that route. What we're going to do is cheat just a little bit though, and we're just going to pull their docker compose.yml file from their server to ours and deploy it that way. Now, if we take a look at Linode's tutorial, the one that we kind of skipped the first few steps on, if we take a look, the way to do that is make a directory, change it into that directory. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But next we've got this curl, and then there's this bit.ly link, and I don't like that. That gives me just a weird, creepy vibe for some reason. With regards to pulling files from a bit.ly link, something about that feels wrong. So what I want to do is actually show you what this bit.ly link looks like. We're going to go ahead and just open that up. And here is, we can see raw.github-user-content.com/appsmith.org /appsmith docs version 1.4 getbook assets docker compose.yml. So that's, I want to show you that file just because I think copying and pasting a bit.ly link into a command prompt without looking at the file first is kind of just bad practice. So I wanted to show that so that we can kind of trust what it is we're downloading here. What we're going to do is we're going to come back over here to our PowerShell. Like it says, we're going to do mkdir. We'll do the ~/Appsmith, like so, and then we'll do a cd into Appsmith, like so. Now we're in the right directory for what we want to do. So the next thing we want to do actually is, again, curl or get that docker compose.yml file. So we're going to go ahead and use the script that or the little code snippet from this tutorial, this curl L. We're going to go ahead and grab that like so and hit enter. And if we do an ls, we can see that there's a docker compose.yml file there. And if we do a nano docker compose.yml, here we can see we've got a version 3. We've got our services of Appsmith. We've got a full Docker image here that we're not going to have to build. Originally, I thought if we were going to clone the whole repository, and if that was the case, you would have to build it. But there's some issues building it if you don't have everything configured just right on your server. So we're going to go this route with a pre-built Appsmith image from the Docker repository here. And we can see that we're going to use the Appsmith Community Edition version of Appsmith. We've got a container name of Appsmith. We've got ports 80 and 443 here. If your server is already using ports 80 and 443 for whatever reason, you can come down here and change these to maybe something like 8010. Oops, cancel. Something, let's try that again too. Something like 8010, like that, or 40 or 4543. If you wanted to go that route, this is a brand new server, so we don't need to do that. But if you were deploying this on a server that was already using ports 80 and 443, you would want to change those, and that's how you go about doing that. Our volumes, we're just going to deploy this right here in the folder that we're already in, and it's just going to put it in a stacks subfolder for the Appsmith stacks. Next, we've got a restart policy of unless stopped. That is perfectly acceptable. So if anything goes wrong or your server reboots or whatever, it'll just automatically come right back up. In an ideal situation, sometimes things go wrong, but this is pretty safe most of the time. Now, below that, we've got some stuff, some labels for enabling Watchtower. Now, if you want to use Watchtower, that is your prerogative. Just be careful with it, because if you're not familiar or if you're not sure what the new update is going to do, it could break something in your project. So be careful using Watchtower for automatic updates. I think it's great to get notifications about updates, but I don't necessarily trust it to do actual updates automatically in a production setting. It's a touchy situation for some people. So if you wanted to do that, however, you could just come over here and delete the little hashtag or the pound sign in front of basically this line all the way down, and then save, exit, and deploy. So let's actually not save that exactly like it is. I'm going to go ahead and do Control O and X like so. So now we're not going to use Watchtower in our setup here. The next thing we want to do, though, is actually deploy this. And the way we're going to do that is by doing docker-compose up-d. So it's just saying, hey, Docker Compose, bring up the Docker Compose file that's here, but detach it from the terminal window here, meaning if we didn't run this with the -D or the detached flag on there, this container would shut down as soon as we close this terminal window. So we want to make sure that it's not dependent on the terminal window being open, hence the -D. So once we've got that, we can press Control, or we can just press Enter. We'll let it go ahead and pull everything, and once it's done, we'll come back and take a look at Appsmith in our browser.
A few moments later.
Okay, so here we are just a couple of moments later, and it says that creating Appsmith is done. We can see that down here in the green text right there. So our next step will be to jump over to our browser window and open up our Linode's IP address. So we'll come back to our Linode dashboard. We're just going to come to the IP address for this Linode and click Copy, open a new tab, paste that in there, and here is Appsmith. So we will want to give this a few minutes to come up. It is doing some stuff in the background. It is still deploying some services in the background for this container. So if you see Appsmith servers unavailable, please try again after some time. Give it a couple of minutes, and it should finish setting up, and you can try again. Okay, so after just a minute, I refreshed. Here we are, and it says, let's create a user account so you can make some awesome applications. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click Get Started. I'm actually going to go ahead and minimize this window back here, just so that it's not constantly there. So my full name, we're going to say DB Tech. I'm going to put in my email address. I'll give it a password. And verify the password. For the role that you play, this doesn't really matter as far as I can tell. I'm just going to say engineer. Tell us about our use case, just exploring, personal project, work project, other. I'm going to say just exploring, and I'll click next. So usage data preferences. Do you want to share anonymous data to help improve the product? Yes or no? Completely up to you. You can check this box on or off. And do you want to get updates about additional products and services that they may release? I'm going to say no. I get so much email. I don't want to get more right now. Nothing personal if Appsmith sees this. But next, we're going to click on Make Your First App. And here we are. Now we're logged in for the first time. And it says, welcome to Appsmith. Here's a quick overview of how Appsmith works. You can connect your database or APIs so that you can query your own database or APIs inside Appsmith. And you can write JavaScript to conduct dynamic queries. You can use the drag and drop pre-built widgets to build a UI, which allows you to customize styling of every widget and then bind your data to the widget and use JavaScript JS to write any logic. Then you can publish and share with permissions, where it says instantly publish and share your apps with users. Choose from predefined access and control roles. Do you want to start the tutorial or do you want to build your own? I think this is a good time to start our first tutorial. So let's go ahead and click on the orange button right here. So in this tutorial, we'll build a tool to display customer information. This tool has tables that display customer data and a form to update a particular customer record. Try out the tool before you start building. So we can do that. This app connects to a Postgres database with customer data called Customers DB. That seems pretty logical. So here we've got Kelvin A. We can scroll through. We can click on any of these that we want. Let's do David Washington here. Let's change him to DB Tech, and let's change his email address. And we're going to say USA, and we're going to click to update. And just like that, now this has been updated. Now, this doesn't give me the option, for the sake of the tutorial, to update the picture, but it did allow me to update the data associated with him with regards to name, email, and location or country. So now that we can see that it works, let's see how it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Start Building. So our first step is querying the database. Here we're querying a Postgres database populated with customer data. And it says this command will fetch the first 20 items in the user data database. Hit run to see the response. So here we can see the query. We can see the little Postgres thing up here for get customers. So here we can see that we're going to select we're going to select everything from the users, and we're going to order by the ID. So basically the order in which they were entered is probably how the ID was set up. We're only going to pull the first 20 though. And once we're happy with that, of course, we can modify that if we wanted to, something like that. We're going to go ahead and click on Run. And right down here, we can see what those look like. Our response is items or IDs 5 through 9. There weren't 20, but here you can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like down here. We can also look at it as a JSON file if we wanted to do that, or we can just look at it raw, which again is very much a JSON layout there. I wish that wouldn't do that right there. Anyway, we can look at errors if there were any. We can look at logs for that. We can inspect the entity if we wanted to go that route. But we kind of get the idea of how this query works. We could select all from any of the tables inside that Postgres database. So we're going to proceed to the next steps. So we want to, our next step will be to display the response in a table. You're going to select the table widget we've added for you. So we're going to click on Customers Table. And here's what that looks like. So what we want to do is copy this getCustomers.data snippet right there. We're going to paste that right into here like so. And here, just that quickly, we can see that it has already populated all of that information. So that gives us an idea of how we can lay this out very, very simply by just using a quick little snippet that they've got here. Okay, so now it says the table is now displaying the response of your query, and you can use the double braces like that in any input field to bind data to widgets. So now we can proceed to the next step. The right pane, or the pane on the right, is called the property pane, and here you can modify data or properties, data, and styling for every widget. So we're going to click on Got It. So here for step 4, it says let's build a form to update a customer record. We'll display the data from the table's selected row inside an input field. This will let us see the data before we update it. So again, we can click through and we can see any of this stuff in here. And of course, we don't have it. It's none of this data is showing up for the name, email, and country. And that's because we actually have to bind that data to those cells. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to click Proceed. So here it's saying, hey, get the customer tables for the selected row, we want to get the name. So we're going to go ahead and copy this like so. We're going to click right here. And then for the default value, that's where we're going to put that little snippet in the double curly braces there. We can do the same thing with email if we wanted to do that, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's proceed to the next step. So here it's saying, hey, let's connect their input and their country data, but kind of repeating what we just did for the name. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to come over to the default value again. We'll paste that in there. We can see that now that we've completed that, our tutorial is going to check that off. We're going to do the same thing here for the country, for the default value like so. So now we can see that all of the inputs are connected to the table's selected row, so we can proceed to the next step. So we want to switch to the widget pane, like it's pulled over here, and then drag and drop a button that's going to allow us to click Submit and actually update this data. So we're going to grab the button, we're going to drag it over to just like right there, should be fine. And it says click to update, so we're going to click that. And we're going to click Proceed to the next step. Now it's ready for us to trigger the update command. So it says to update customers through the button, we created an update customers info query for you, which is ready to use. We're going to proceed to the next step and select the button widget to see the properties in the property pane. From the on-click dropdown, select execute a query and then select update customer info. So we're going to click here. We're going to do this on click, like it's got a little tip there, like, hey, this is where we want to look. So we're going to do this, and we're going to look for update or execute a query and then update customer info. So execute a query and then update customer info. So after successfully triggering the update query, fetch and update the customer data. So we're going to click on the on success dropdown, and then choose or execute a query, and then get customers. So now you've built a way to see customer data and update it. So we'll click continue. So now we can test our app to ensure that there are no errors. When you're ready, click deploy and deploy this app to a URL. So let's come over to here. Let's just change this to David, and we're going to call this YouTube. And then we'll click on update. And here we can see that it has updated my name and it's updated my location. So at this point, we are good to go. Our application works. So what we can do is come up to the top right and click on deploy. Cool, you just built your first app in Appsmith. You can now invite others to this application, and you can rate your experience if you'd like to do that. Of course, up at the top, you can click share. That's how you would share this with other people. You can also edit the app. And up here, of course, we've got our profile information, edit profile, sign out, those sorts of things. So now that we've built our first app via the tutorial, let's actually jump over to the apps over here in the top left. And here we can see we've got a customer dashboard, or a customer support dashboard. We've got our first application. We've got workspaces. Of course, DB's apps is the workspace that we're in right now. We can create a new application if we want to do that. If we do that, yeah, we want to go ahead and end this. It's fine. So at this point, we can generate a page from a data table. So if we wanted to create a CRUD UI and connect to a database, we could do that. Or we could start from a template. And there are a bunch of different templates in here that you can get started with if you'd like to do that. Of course, you can filter by data source, basically what kind of data source. Is it a MongoDB, a PostgreSDB, S3, REST API? What kind of functionality are you looking for? Is it customer support or communication or sales or marketing? Lots of different options in there that you can select from and start kind of from a pre-built template to help expedite your application, your internal application building process, to help streamline some of your back-end processes. Again, whether it's your local, your own business, your team, your organization, whatever the case is, Appsmith is a great way to build applications to help kind of streamline the process of going through whatever your process is, I guess is kind of the best way to say that. So that's kind of a quick introduction to Appsmith. Let me know if you'd like to do more on Appsmith. I'd be happy to take a look at that, and maybe we could take a look at building some more applications or things like that. Also, don't forget, head down to the description where you'll find a link to head over to Linode and get $100 in free credit to check out Linode service free for 60 days. But that kind of wraps up everything I wanted to talk about in this video. Just going to be a quick crash course into Appsmith on Docker. I want to thank Linode for sponsoring this video, and of course, the resources needed to deploy the Linode where we deployed Appsmith. I also want to thank you guys for spending just a few minutes of your day with me today. I really do appreciate your time, and I will hopefully talk to you in the next video.